First, what I want to do is introduce our panelists. We have Kathy Deal, counselor in charge with the North Carolina Division of Vocational Rehabilitation Services. In 2001, she earned a dual master's degree in rehabilitation and substance abuse counseling at East Carolina University. Go Pirates. She has over 22 years of experience working with individuals with disabilities, including group homes and mental health and substance abuse counseling. 16 of these years of service have been with the North Carolina Division of Vocational Rehabilitation. Mark Gazelle serves as director of the North Carolina Governor's Highway Safety Program and also serves as the governor's representative for highway safety and has directed statewide public safety and health campaigns for over 20 years. He was appointed by Governor Easley to chair the North Carolina Council on Developmental Disabilities, where he oversaw the council's innovative disability inclusion activities. He is the founder of both Access Vote, a nonpartisan organization working to improve voter access for voters with disabilities, and the North Carolina Disability Action Network, a statewide organization providing a public policy voice for people with disabilities and others concerned about human service issues. He has a long and impressive professional background. Too much of that to share right now, but his experience will certainly add to our discussion today. He also has a phenomenal dog named Truman, who I believe is a Golden Retriever St. Bernard mix, who I've had the chance to meet, and it's just fantastic. Barbara Lucas is a casework technician with students and transition services at the Division of Vocational Rehabilitation Services, where she has worked for the past 15 years. She is a North Carolina native, born and raised in Wilson, and has worked nearly 25 years in banking, which brought her to the Queen City area, where she was introduced to vocational rehabilitation services. Her love for people reflects through her desire to encourage and inspire everyone she meets. And she's often quoted and well known for saying, "You can hear a smile." So keep that in mind as you go throughout your day. And then finally, Tim Moore. Tim is an accredited veteran service officer with the North Carolina Department of Military and Veterans Affairs. He's a disabled combat veteran of the Iraq and Afghanistan wars in support of ongoing efforts for the global war on terror. Tim advocates for the veteran population in North Carolina to attain benefits and entitlements that they may be qualified for from state and federal governments. Tim has been working in the field of advocacy since his medical retirement from the Army in 2016 and has been with the state since 2018. And Tim, we certainly thank you for your service to our country. So at this time, I want to go ahead and move into our panel discussion, if we can go ahead and do that. And so very briefly for all of you, we'll just kind of start with what I see on the screen first, which is Mark, and then we'll go to Kathy, Tim, and Barbara in that order. If you could just briefly describe your personal experience with having a disability, how it has impacted your work and any obstacles you may have faced, and then how that's led you to where you are today.
Well, I'll start. As somebody who was born with spina bifida, I have used mobility enhancements in a variety of ways: crutches, braces, now wheelchair, to get from place to place. It's certainly obviously been impactful in my life. And in terms of my professional service, it's certainly been an issue that employers at different times have had a difficult, or have thought they would have a difficult time dealing with. And there are a number of occasions where there have been positions and jobs that I have not received because somehow they thought that those human services related work, nonprofit related work, and policy related work that I was trying to achieve required a level of toe dexterity, which frankly, I have not found to be the case in my professional life. But it has certainly been impactful. The prejudices, the preconceptions have all been difficult to address, but I think that forums like this can help.
Kathy, same question for you.
Okay. Well, my experience with ADHD has been challenging all my life. I was labeled right from the beginning as a bad kid because it's a hidden disability, so people who don't see it don't realize what's going on. Did you think a little bit differently? Had to work 3 times harder to get the same thing done that most people take for granted a lot of times mentally, having to learn and incorporate things. It has impacted my career. It's been very difficult for me in many ways. To be able to focus, even just complete simple tasks. But I've learned some tools over the years that have helped me get grounded. Learned a lot to help me survive. Like coach management, organizational tips, LMS training that VR has provided has been wonderful and helpful for me. And I've just learned that, I got to push myself harder, not giving up. I like to prove the bullies wrong. Those that bullied me along the way. I'm like, no, I'm going to show you, I feel it's helped me grow in my career. Now I'm able to, have a supervisor position after all this time. If it had not been for the understanding and support there over the years of the agency and management and co-workers, I don't know where I'd be today, to be honest. It's just been made a tremendous difference.
Tim, let's hear from you next.
Well, when I first was discharged from the military, I had mobility issues pretty extensively due to some injuries I had sustained. I had to use a cane for mobility for a good portion of the first 2 years. It wasn't until I learned the appropriate level of exercise and physical activity that helped me to leave the assistive devices for the most part. But then I also have, anxiety and other forms of conditions that I still have to learn how to overcome on a daily basis. So it certainly has posed unique challenges, and it's taken the necessity for me to take a step back and really think before I speak or think before I act, so I don't fly off the handle.
And Barbara, for you.
Yes, I am diagnosed with muscular dystrophy, limb girdle muscular dystrophy, which affects the extremities, the arms, the legs, what have you. It is genetic, and it's progressive, but I am fortunate in that mine has been very slow in progressing. And I think a lot of that is because I'm just determined not to give in, to push, continue to push. Always. And in fact, I have told my manager that I won't retire. I'll be right here, forever. She doesn't have to worry about losing me. I'll be right here. But as I said, I worked in banking for about almost 25 years. And then I was laid off because of a merger. And then as I began to look for employment, I would go into interview, and as I rolled in on my scooter, the eye level would go from my eyes to the scooter. So right away, I knew what that interview, how it was going to result. But then my mother, who happens to live in California, was the one who suggested, well, why don't you try vocational rehab? Okay, Mom, what is voc rehab? I've never heard of it. So, I say it's one of the best kept secrets here in North Carolina, but that's what brought me to, I was brought to the Queen City area. I became a client with vocational rehabilitation, and I'm now employed. And they have given me, voc rehab has given me the accommodations that I've needed to continue to work and to continue to go. And so it's been kind of a domino effect from there.
This next question, open-ended, anybody can feel free to answer. We talked about the importance of self-identifying your disability in that portal for state employees at the very beginning of everything, but having a disability is often stigmatized. And I know that is part of the reason that revealing it can be a very difficult decision to make. Was that ever an issue for any of you, worrying about that stigmatism? And if so, how did you overcome that? What was kind of the deciding factor in deciding, hey, I am going to self-identify as someone with a disability? And anyone can answer that question.
Okay. With me, I found that for a very, very long time, I never actually said I have muscular dystrophy. I would say I am diagnosed with muscular dystrophy, not really accepting that. So that was a big part of it for me. And it was only maybe about 12 years ago that I actually came to terms with that after a very, very bad fall, and I was no longer able to ambulate. I am non-ambulatory right now, and I have to have my scooter and handicap accessible vehicle, but still it is difficult to say handicap, and you don't want to say handicap. We are disabled, but differently. And so that was a turning point for me.
For me, whenever I disclose I'm a veteran, it almost creates this negative connotation in a sort, and leads people to assume a lot of different things. Oh, you're a veteran. Are you crazy? Do you have PTSD? Things of that nature. And a lot of that's because of the awareness and popular culture with movies and things of that nature, which raises awareness of veterans with disabilities. So I never really had the opportunity to decide, if I wanted to disclose it or not. By volunteering the information that I'm a veteran, a lot of people then assume. So in a way, I almost had to alter my way of thinking to accommodate others' perceptions and ideas and misconceptions about me as a person, just because I am a veteran, and had to convince them that it wasn't going to be a negative situation with me working with them, or so on and so forth.
Well, let's move on to the next question. Mark, this question's for you. And these are from Gina's notes. So she says, in discussing the ADA with two former colleagues recently, so this is not me speaking this, but the big Gina, she said she heard one say, managers need employees who are good multitaskers, people who can quickly take on different roles, especially in light of the pandemic where everything has changed. She added, people with disabilities are pretty much limited in what they can do. How do you respond to that kind of thinking?
Two things. I'm floored. But there's two things that come about. One, that person's a bigot. I mean, come on. We would never in a million years say that about an African American. Put the words African American in front of persons with disabilities. We'd never say that. We'd never say that about a woman. Of course not. But saying that about people with disabilities is somehow considered to be all right. The second thing, and this is what floors me, is that's not just wrong, that's 180 degrees wrong. That's the exact opposite of what's true. What is in fact true is that having a disability gives you the ability, it exercises the muscle in one's head about being creative and being adaptable and being, frankly, a multitasker. We have to do that all the time. I got to be creative about figuring out how to get the Starbucks off the shelf when I go to the Harris Teeter, and then I got to be creative about how to get in my car when somebody else is parked too close. And then I've got to be creative about how I'm going to reach the paper above the copier. I got to be creative all the time. And so the idea that you can't be a multitasker and have a disability is ridiculous. Multitasking is our secret sauce. It's what we bring to the table in an employer situation. So, and it's interesting what Senator Harkin said about COVID and how COVID has impacted people with disabilities. For the longest time, disabled people have been saying to employers, I'd love the ability to work from home. Maybe I could work from home and have an adjustable schedule and be able to video conference with my employees, because it can be difficult to get from place to place. I don't have the transportation or there's physical limitation. And employers have said, oh no, that will never work. We cannot possibly be productive if we have people video conferencing all the time and working from home with adjustable schedules. Well, guess what? That's what we're all doing now. And it's worked out fairly well. So the idea that this kind of situation we're in now is not, is somehow disadvantageous to employees with disabilities is ridiculous. And the very broad concept that this person has put in this bigoted concept that we're unable to be multitaskers is just that.
That's a great point that you make, especially about the
Hopefully not
adaptability.
frothing at the mouth a little bit there.
Well, I appreciate your thoughts on that. The adaptability is certainly a huge thing. Just a personal anecdote. I have a friend of mine who is really a tremendous golfer, and he has cerebral palsy and can only swing with one arm. And what he's able to do on the golf course is far better than I'm able to do on the golf course. That's not saying a whole lot, but he is pretty incredible when he's out there. Kathy, I want to bring you in on the next question. Do you feel that there's an overall lack of knowledge about reasonable accommodations, policies, and what the ADA covers? And if so, how do we counter that lack of knowledge?
Yeah, I do believe there is a general lack of knowledge. I've heard employers express concerns about accommodations may cost too much, or individuals on, maybe an insurance risk. They don't seem to understand what's meant by a reasonable accommodation. It could be simple changing the application, or or doing a way task is done. Just because it's done differently doesn't mean it's being done wrong. Many automatically assume the accommodation create this huge undue hardship. But what I try to tell them is, look, not only you're accommodating your employee, but you could be accommodating future consumers coming into your business as well. So I always stress that, especially when I do. I think a good start to counteract this lack of knowledge is by educating employers, increasing their understanding about the ADA itself, like we're doing now, DEAM events, and this increased social media. I think this is really heading in the right direction. Maybe have some sort of like resource support line for them, some sort of ADA line. There may be some things out there, but I may not be aware of, but that might be a thought to kind of counteract that. Discussions and trainings on how to have the conversation with an employer without fear of losing your job. That's what a lot of people are afraid of. If I reveal this, am I going to get on the chopping board? Many individuals, even some individuals with disabilities themselves, are not fully aware of what ADA is. I've used that term to several because all our consumers do have disabilities, and they look at me like, "What is ADA? I mean, what exactly is it? What does it do? What is it? How's it going to help me?" It already has. You just don't know it is sometimes, and so the lack of knowledge really, really is important to increase that. And reaching out to employers and sharing ideas on what is reasonable accommodations and how to provide that without a hardship on them. I've heard both of them express the feeling and they're intimidated by it, they feel like I said, being forced to, but then I come back with that. Hey, wait a minute, you're not being forced. You're actually increasing your business and you're really helping. It's not going to be not forced to do anything that's going to be harmful to your business. So that's how I feel.
Awesome. Thank you. Tim, I want to turn to you on this one. How can employers address attitudes that contribute to workplace discrimination that create obstacles to acquiring or maintaining employment? So perhaps if employers are not able to assess an applicant's ability to do the job, or they feel uncomfortable with the person's disability itself, how can employers address those attitudes in the workplace to overcome discrimination that there may be?
Well, I think that there's more so naivety that needs to be addressed. People have a naive impression that because someone is differently abled, that they are not going to be able to perform the same functions or tasks. As it was mentioned earlier, individuals with disabilities, whether it be physical, mental, whatever, often think outside the box to reach up above the printer to get the paper. A lot of it comes down to just raising awareness, not babying or coddling the individual. Some tasks might require an additional hand, some tasks they might not be able to do, but at the same time, give them the opportunity. If they say, "Hey, I can do this," let them. When it comes time to accommodations, some people might require a slightly different chair than what is typically provided within the office setting. That's a reasonable accommodation. That should be something that the HR departments should be willing and eager to jump on to make life and their ability to work more practical. I had another note here. and it's something that we all ultimately need to come to understand and to accept, is that not everyone's going to be willing to understand. We can't change everyone, but what we can do is change the way that we see others, and the way that we interact with others. Treat everyone with dignity and respect. That is obviously the golden rule. However, a lot of times, if a management team enforces and encourages a open community and an open door policy where the individual with the disability can come in and discuss a issue with them, then the manager should be able to address the concerns of that person readily.
And Ryan,
go ahead, Mark.
A little bit on that. I like what I think Tim is 100% correct on that, and I completely agree. I would also say that discomfort in the workplace for certain groups of people, it's like an American tradition. Sadly, 80 years ago we had some people had discomfort with African Americans. And 30 years ago, 40 years ago, we had discomfort with women in the workplace. And now there's discomfort with people with disabilities in the workplace. It's not, it's our responsibility to integrate the workplace. And the fact that some people are going to be uncomfortable with that is just something that we're going to have to live with. Prejudice rarely survives experience, as the saying goes. And the more we integrate a workplace and expect that discomfort, but side on the fact of that, side on the side of that integration, then the better off we're going to be as a society. There are talents that we bring to the workplace that employers are not tapping, and that hurts employees, but that also hurts employers. And so the sooner we just get over this discomfort thing, the better off we're going to be. These accommodations that many of us ask for, they cost, as a general rule, very, very little. It's just a matter of innovation. And people with disabilities, we've come up with our own, we know what our reasonable accommodations are, because we bring those to our everyday lives. And so we can work with employers to make that happen in a low cost, easy, sensible way. So reasonable accommodations should not by themselves be anything that employers fear. If they work with a new employee, they should be able to make those happen easily.
Mark, that's kind of a perfect segue into the next question. I want to direct this, Barbara, to you. How has being a minority with a disability impacted your work experience as far as the intersectionality of it all? So maybe if you can describe a little bit of maybe the stigma even attached to minorities with disabilities, and kind of speak to how that has impacted your experience in the workplace.
Yes, it has been, just as I'd mentioned with when I was interviewing for jobs, you could see, as I think one of the questions, the triple Jeopardy syndrome. You often hear and see that because you have, I am a woman, I am African American, I am disabled. So those three strikes are against me right there. But those three strikes don't have to limit what I can do and what I'm capable of doing. A lot of this has to do with my attitude toward myself, because that transfers over to the employer. And as they see that positive attitude that I bring to the table, that's going to make them more relaxed. That helps all of us, actually. And so often there are you have coworkers that don't understand. They have to be trained. All of these employers have to be trained, and you have to show them. It goes there. And so right now with COVID-19, I am still with the triple Jeopardy syndrome because of my age, because of my weakened immune system, because I am an African American woman. So a lot of it has to do with how we approach that, and see the employers see that in us, And then that puts them at ease, and that lets them to, allows them to make better accommodations for us, and for us to work together and to discuss what you need, what I need.
Kathy, for you, how are things different as compared to 10, 20, 30 years ago, something like that? Have things gotten better, much better since the ADA was passed in 1990? Or are we still, as Jennifer Mizrahi of Respectability said during one of our previous ADA anniversary webinars, are we still woefully lagging? And I think Senator Harkin touched on this a little bit as well, that there's been progress made, but there's still a lot to go. But where are we as compared to maybe a decade or 20 years ago?
Well, I feel like Senator Harkin said, we have made some improvements, made some strides, but I do feel overall we do have a long way to go. But it is recognized more and more, I think, but getting that quality employment, that area still is, and that's what I do for a living. And I still see those, the stigmas every day, all the time. So if we can work on that and working, like I said, hitting with the youth early on when they're in school, not reaching out to the teachers, reteaching the parents as well of those students. I think that's going to help, because sometimes that can bring them down where, because they're always told, you can't do this, you can't do that, and the parents are not being very encouraging because they weren't taught that. So you're still in that generation thing because they were taught the same thing. So, but breaking that and educating, I think it's going to be the key. But at least we're having those well overdue conversations that we've been needing to have. I think that's a key. And some of the things he's done with the WIOA Act, I think that has just made tremendous impacts with the schools. I think it'll take several generations to change those perspectives, though, just like it did when to develop the perspectives. We had to negate all these centuries, so it's going to take a little while to really get it going.
I want to turn this over to Tim on this next question. Tim, you've shared with people before that your current job has totally changed your life. And you also always have a quote from General Patton at the end of your emails that says, "If a man does his best, what else is there?" Share with us a little bit about how your job has changed your life and why that quote means so much to you.
Thank you. I work for the veteran population. My agency primarily focuses on hiring veterans for some of the positions, and many of those veterans have documented disabilities from their military service as well. Some of them, in the past have been amputees, wheelchair bound, or any other various form of disability from their military service. So in that aspect, it does make me feel like I'm more at home, because, when I go to a meeting or I go to a conference, it's just a bunch of people that are broken and messed up like I am, to an extent. So it's kind of a fun scenario anytime that we all get together. The quote itself is a personal reminder, more so than anything else, that I'm not perfect, but I'm going to give it my all. I'm going to try my hardest, and at the end of the day, I can hang my hat up and keep my chin up, knowing that I did everything I possibly could. Sometimes my best isn't quite enough, and at that point, I have to reach out for assistance from someone else, or ask for guidance from one of my mentors or one of my coworkers. And it's really having that mindset, knowing that, having that peace of mind, knowing that I gave everything that I possibly could for the veteran and for the people that I'm trying my hardest to assist, that they're going to end up, feeling vindicated and rewarded, whether their claims are approved or denied, because they had someone listen to them. They had someone there who understands and who supports them.
We've got time we got about 10 more minutes or so. So we'll ask a few more questions. One would be, this is open-ended for anybody to answer, so feel free, anybody, to jump in on this. Thoughts on Senator Harkin's remarks, particularly when he talked about the need to reboot Medicaid from a health model to supportive services. Just anybody with any thoughts on that?
Well, I would say that this is a major, major problem. You asked earlier about the ADA and progress that we've made. And I agree with Kathy that we've made some progress in some areas. One of the, a lot of progress has been around public accommodations. public accommodations are much better. You can generally, there's a way to get on a bus. Generally, there's a way to get on an airplane. Then generally there's a way to navigate the public spaces for people with mobility impairments. So that's good. Where there hasn't been a lot of progress, of course, is, and the main topic here is around employment. And this whole Medicaid model thing is a significant problem. Essentially, we're saying that we will pay for the services people with disabilities needs if they live in a congregate setting like a nursing home. But if you want to live at home, well, then we got a whole lot more hoops to go through. And that's just ridiculous. We need to totally flip that on its side. And that would, I think, probably as much as anything, increase the employment rates among people with disabilities. It's also a real bipartisan argument because, you know, Democrats may be more concerned about providing social services and equity. And so this does that. Republicans may be especially concerned about fiscal responsibility and making sure that we don't spend more money than we need to. Well, this does that as well. This would actually be a significant cost savings if we were to flip the Medicaid model on its head and not have this bias toward basically institutionalizing people. It's simply amazing that this is where we've gotten, but through the leadership of Senator Harkin and others, I think it can potentially change. If it does, that's just a game changer for a lot of people.
Any other thoughts from anyone on the senator's remarks? If not, well, let's move on to the next question. A lot of people watching, human resources professionals, we would hope at the very least. So how do we as employers support the need for skill upgrading, professional development I'm speaking about now, for employees with disabilities? And do any of you have any stories in regard to that?
I can jump in again. You know, I think we simply do that the same way we do this for others as well. We make sure that that's an expectation, but we provide the reasonable accommodations and assistance to allow people to meet those skill upgrades. You know, we've got still, with all the jobs that we have in state government, we have the primary responsibilities, the things that the job, people in those jobs must do, the core competencies that are required. And we need to make sure that we meet those. And many people with disabilities can. And the expectation should be that people acquire more skills. But, you know, merely having a disability, depending on what it is not going to compromise that. For some, it may mean some more accommodations, but it doesn't mean it needs to be compromised.
I agree with what Mark was saying there, that with the right training, just like with any other employee, right training and support of management, you can do anything anybody else can do. I mean, we just have to have that support in place. I think that's going to be good. And the training, like provide, and most time employers provide that just to other employees. So why not to us? You know. So yeah.
That's a kind of a great segue into this next question. We probably have time for about two more, so we'll go with this one now. There's kind of a myth that individuals with disabilities might be a liability to employers. We talked about that earlier with employees with disabilities are limited, or that they might not be reliable as far as attendance, they can't keep up with other employees. But the facts are that studies kind of show statistically, employees with disabilities have better attendance, they're more committed, they perform exceptionally well in their roles. Deputy Assistant Secretary for the U.S. Office of Disability Employment Policy, Jennifer Sheehy, recently stated that people with disabilities are experienced problem solvers with a proven ability to adapt. What message, and again, this question for everybody, what message from your own experience and experiential learning in working with others would you give to managers and supervisors to help them understand the value of having more inclusive hiring practices and considering your demographic for key employment opportunities?
I'll go ahead and take that one. First and foremost, I can't agree more with Ms. Is it Sheehy? Sheehy's, okay, with Ms. Sheehy's sentiment. People with disabilities do think outside the box, as Mark was saying earlier, in order to complete a similar task that someone without a disability, can do without thought. What it all comes down to is the commitment and dedication that the individual, the employee has to be able to perform all of the necessary functions of their job. Employers, they certainly should consider a small or, potentially small accommodation, and that accommodation could really mean the absolute world to the individual, employee with the disability. That's going to show the employee that their company cares about them, that they want to create a warm and welcoming and inviting employment opportunity for them. And it's going to have, the result will be that the individual who is receiving the accommodation is going to be grateful, wanting to work harder, wanting to show that they're capable. So it's going to be a very symbiotic relationship if, even small accommodations are made.
I also feel that employers need to be educated more. They need to know what the employee needs, and lots of times it's just a matter of listening to that employee, and they may not know exactly what they need themselves, but the two of them together then can come up with the appropriate accommodations, because we do adapt. We adapt with everything that we do every day. Just very, very simple things. As I rode out of the house this morning, there's the problem of, how do I close the door? Okay, because I can't reach back over my shoulder to get to it because I'm on a scooter. I have to have some way to close this door. And so you make concessions. You come up with ways, with ideas that work for you. And that carries over to your employer, to your employment. With everything that you do, we're always making concessions. So the employee, they need to learn. They need to listen to us. I really wish that, as employees went in for an interview, or that they would listen to the applicant first before they charge in with all the questions of, can you do this? Can you do that? This is what we need. Listen to what I have to say, because I can offer lots of things that perhaps you didn't even think of that are going to help you and your company with all that is needed, with very, very, very minimal accommodations. So they do need to listen. They need to be trained.
I want to end with this last question for everybody, and we'll have everybody answer on this one. Want to focus on what's most important about disability employment awareness. If you could share 2 or 3 words or thoughts to guide hiring managers, HR professionals, and organization leaders, what would they be?
Well, I'll start with that, Ryan. I said it'd be like an oar: open-minded, accepting, and respectful. Like an oar guides a boat, let these 3 words guide our thoughts and decisions.
Fantastic. Thank you.
My quote would be, hear us, then see us.
I would have to say, don't look at the surface, look at the heart of the individual.
And mine is not nearly as good as the previous 3, nor as concise. But what I would say is that there are a lot of things that people with disabilities, because of the disability, can add to the workplace. It is not some pejorative to get over. It's a value add that employee brings, just like they bring other life experiences to your work. And as Senator Harkin mentioned with his brother working in the tool shop, there are skills that we bring not in spite of the disability, but because of it.
Well, I want to thank all of you, our panelists, for being with us today. Kathy Deal and Tim Moore, Barbara Lucas, Mark Ezell. Also want to thank Emily Jones and Brian Tipton for being our sign language interpreters today. Of course, want to thank Director of State Human Resources, Barbara Gibson, for being on in the first hour. And obviously, thank Senator Harkin, Tom Harkin, for being on with us. And of course, thank all of you who watched today. And in closing, I just want to turn things back over to Nancy Astrike for a couple of closing thoughts. But thank you, everybody, for participating today.
I thank you. I just want to echo Ryan's comments on that list of thank yous. This has been a collaborative and very positive effort to bring these important issues to the table. To the panel, thank you for that very great conversation about your experiences as state employees. I know as the Office of State Human Resources and from Director Gibson, we want to thank you for your service to the state and your continued commitment to public service in your role. So thank you very much for doing that. Thank you for being here with us today and bringing this important message forward. We will reach back out to you at a date forward for more opportunities to continue this conversation. So we got you now. And as Ryan said, we also want to thank very much Senator Harkin for his inspirational comments this morning. A wonderful opportunity to speak with him and gain his perspective. To Director Gibson for being here with us this morning and kicking us off to this great event. We also wanted, in addition to the interpreters who have been seamless, thank the Department of Health and Human Services, not only for leading us to some of our panelists, but for their continued support in technology and other issues today to make this an accessible and positive event for individuals with disabilities. And lastly, we want to thank the staff at the Office of State Human Resources. We've put a lot of effort into making this event come forward. And so many thank yous to everyone that made a contribution here today. So again, echoing all those comments, all those thank yous. It's been a wonderful event. This event will be recorded, has been recorded, and will be available on YouTube in about an hour in its entirety. If you want to share this event with other people or watch it again, please feel free to go back to YouTube. And this event will be available for you to watch in its entirety. With that, again, a final thank you, and we hope that you continue to stay safe and have a wonderful day as your afternoon progresses. Thank you, everyone, for your efforts today, and we look forward to seeing you in the very near future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.